Well, this is a rather interesting turn of events. It has raised, as Robin Lundberg puts it in this article, raises eyebrows. It catches attention. Well, the NBA All-Star Game came and went. No WNBA Players Union strike was present. And now this morning we get this word of Breanna Stewart going to play overseas. Well, that's kind of...
Eyebrows raised, that's the polite way of putting it. When Breanna Stewart, vice president of the WNBA Players Union, announced she's heading to Turkey in April to play in the EuroLeague finals, the timing couldn't be more suspicious, because right now Adam Silver is calling the collective bargaining negotiations the 11th hour. Training camp starts April 19th. Stewart's EuroLeague commitment ends April 19th, same day. So what does one of the union's top leaders know that we don't?
Anyway, Robin Lundberg's broken this down a little bit so everybody will have a better understanding. So this was an announcement from a Turkish basketball club that Stewart would be joining the squad ahead of the EuroLeague Final Six. I would assume maybe this is their championship playoff kind of run. Look, I don't know anything about EuroLeague basketball. I'm not even going to try to act like I do. Per the release, Stewart, who played for, insert this team's name here that I'm not even going to attempt, in 2023 and helped lead the team to his first EuroLeague championship, will join in April.
Here's what makes this announcement particularly strange. This isn't just any Turkish basketball club. Stewart played for them back in 2023 and helped deliver their first EuroLeague championship. She's going back, and she's bringing company. Liberty teammate Brianna Messaman and Seattle's Gabby Williams are on that same roster. 3 WNBA stars, committing to overseas play that cuts right up against the start of the season. The EuroLeague Women Final Six runs April 15th through 19th in Spain. NBA training camp begins April 19th. Season opener, May 8th.
She will be added to a roster that includes Liberty teammate Emma Messaman and Gabby Williams from Seattle. And there's the picture of the release right there. Welcome back, Breanna Stewart. Of course, there's obviously tons of precedent for WNBA players competing overseas, but the timing of Stewart's commitment has led to some speculation among fans, whether it should be taken as a signal regarding the state of the WNBA CBA negotiations.
Now let's be clear about something. WNBA players competing overseas during the offseason is nothing new. It's been standard practice for years. The money overseas often exceeds WNBA salaries, and players have built entire secondary careers in international leagues. But this isn't a typical off-season commitment. This is April. This is when CBA negotiations are supposed to be wrapping up. This is when union leadership should be laser-focused on getting a deal done. Instead, Stewart's booking flights to Spain.
Yeah, I just did a video yesterday. He called for urgency. I don't know. The EuroLeague competition will conclude prior to the start of the season. All right. Per FIBA, the EuroLeague Women Final Six will be hosted in Spain from April 15th through the 19th, 2026. WNBA training camp is scheduled to begin April 19, with the season commencing on May 8th. So, assuming Stewart plays the maximum number of contests overseas, at worst, her arrival for camp will be slightly delayed if the season starts on time.
Adam Silver didn't mince words. He stated publicly that collective bargaining talks have reached the 11th hour and called for urgency from all parties. Not just the owners, not just the league office, all parties. That includes the players' union. And when the commissioner of the NBA, who oversees the WNBA's operations, makes a public statement like that, it's not a casual observation. It's a warning. Negotiations that should have been progressing for months apparently didn't gain real momentum until early February. Now it's March, the season's supposed to start in May, and one of the union's key negotiators is committing to be in Europe during crunch time.
So, interesting. Now, this person tweeted out, hey, a belief the season won't start on time. B, a middle finger to the prioritization clause and its penalties. C, both. Yeah, but if she's done this before, I don't know that there's much to be read out of this. Really and truly. You know, if she's played in this before, and obviously I believe it said 2023, well, there was no lockout or work stoppage then at all.
So what does Stewart believe? That's the question everyone's trying to answer. Does she think a deal will be finalized before she leaves, making her presence unnecessary for the final signatures? Does she believe negotiations are going so smoothly that her absence won't matter? Or is there a darker possibility? Does she think a deal won't happen at all, meaning the season might be delayed or partially canceled, making her April commitment irrelevant? Because if you're confident the season starts on time, and your union needs you at the negotiating table, you don't book overlapping international commitments.
I imagine she got a good hunk of money to go over there and play, would be my guess. But I don't know that there's a lot to read from this. You know, if the ending of this season was quite a bit past the start of training camp, then yeah, it raised a lot of eyebrows, but it's not. It's right at the same time. So there's, 1 day of cross-pollination there, for lack of a better way of putting it. But it does make you wonder.
Robin Lundberg broke down the timeline in detail, and the math is tight. If Stewart plays the maximum number of contests in the EuroLeague tournament, her return to the United States for WNBA training camp will be delayed. Not by weeks, but delayed nonetheless. The optics of a union vice president missing even 1 day of training camp while CBA negotiations hang in the balance. That's not great, and it raises an uncomfortable question about priorities. When you're in leadership, your presence sends a message. Your absence sends one too.
And you're one of the leaders of the players' union. Not great. And you just got through saying the other day that you were beginning to get excited. You felt positive about the directions of the CBA. Now, I will say this. From an optics standpoint, from a perception standpoint, this don't look great. All right? It doesn't look great. For fans that are sitting back going, is there going to be a season? And then they look up and see this.
Now here's where fan perception becomes a problem. The WNBA's fan base has grown dramatically. Let's say they've reached 4 million fans. That's being generous, but let's use that number. 3.5 million of those fans are relatively new. They showed up for Caitlin Clark. They discovered Angel Reese. They fell in love with the competition and stayed for the storylines. But they don't know the history of overseas play. They don't understand EuroLeague schedules. They don't follow CBA negotiations closely. All they see is a headline. WNBA Union VP signs overseas deal during contract negotiations. And alarm bells start ringing.
When the WNBA season's about to start, and then all of a sudden alarm bells are going to go off for a section of fans. Keep in mind, if the WNBA has 4 million fans, now let's stop it. If they had, yeah, okay, I'll give them 4 million fans. If they've got 4 million fans, 3.5 million of them is relatively new they're just sports fans that were like, oh shit, Caitlin Clark's awesome. Then they found out Sophie Cunningham, awesome. And yada, yada, yada.
Casual fans are going to panic. They're going to see this news and immediately jump to conclusions. Does this mean there's no season? Is the league folding? Are the players giving up on negotiations? These aren't informed takes. They're gut reactions from people who just discovered the WNBA exists and are now worried their new favorite league is imploding. That perception problem matters because fan confidence drives ticket sales, merchandise purchases, and viewership. If casual fans believe the season's in jeopardy, they disengage, they move on to the next thing, and rebuilding that attention is exponentially harder than maintaining it. So from a pure optics standpoint, this announcement is a disaster. It doesn't matter if Stewart has done this before. It doesn't matter if the EuroLeague commitment ends exactly when training camp begins. What matters is how it looks to millions of fans who don't have context. And it looks like a union leader is prioritizing overseas money over getting a deal done. Fair or not, that's the perception. And in media, perception becomes reality faster than facts can catch up. Here's the thing about leadership during negotiations. Your actions communicate more than your words. Stewart could issue a statement tomorrow saying she's fully committed to getting a CBA deal done. She could promise she'll be back in time for camp. She could explain that this overseas commitment was planned months ago and doesn't conflict with her union responsibilities. But none of that changes what fans see: a union vice president leaving the country during the most critical negotiation period in league history. And let's talk about the other side of the table. How does Adam Silver react to this? How do the WNBA owners interpret this move? Because they're watching too. If you're an owner sitting in negotiations and you see the union's vice president booking international play during crunch time, what message does that send? It could signal confidence that a deal will get done quickly. Or it could signal the union isn't taking these negotiations as seriously as the league office wants them to. Either interpretation creates problems. If owners think the union is confident about a quick deal, they might dig in harder on their positions, knowing the players won't actually strike. If owners think the union isn't prioritizing negotiations, they might question whether they're negotiating with serious partners. Neither scenario helps get a deal done. Both scenarios create friction that could have been avoided if Stewart had simply waited until after the CBA was signed to commit to overseas play. Now let's consider the prioritization clause. The WNBA has penalties for players who don't prioritize the league over international commitments. Those penalties exist specifically to prevent situations where players miss training camp or regular season games for overseas obligations. Stewart's commitment technically doesn't violate the prioritization clause, because the EuroLeague tournament ends before the season starts. But it walks right up to the line, and if she's even one day late to camp because of travel delays or tournament schedule changes, she's in violation. That's a risk. A calculated one, sure, but a risk nonetheless. And it raises the question, why take that risk right now? If you're a union leader trying to negotiate better terms for players, including potentially loosening the prioritization clause, why put yourself in a position where you might violate it? It hands ammunition to the owners who want to keep those penalties strict. It undermines your own negotiating position. Unless Stewart believes the prioritization clause is going away entirely in the new CBA. That would explain the timing. If she knows the union is demanding elimination of prioritization penalties and expects to win that concession, then her overseas commitment makes sense. It's a signal that players will soon have freedom to play internationally without restriction. But if that's the case, negotiations must be going much better than Adam Silver's public comments suggest. Because 11th hour and urgent don't typically describe negotiations where one side is getting everything they want. The alternative explanation is darker. Maybe Stewart thinks the season won't start on time. Maybe she believes a lockout or work stoppage is likely, meaning her April commitment won't actually conflict with WNBA obligations, because there won't be any WNBA obligations. If you think the season's going to be delayed by weeks or months while negotiations drag on, booking overseas play makes perfect sense. You might as well earn money in Europe while the league figures itself out. But if that's what Stewart believes, she's not saying it publicly. And that creates a credibility problem. Because players have been telling fans for months that they're optimistic about negotiations. They've been posting on social media about progress. They've been reassuring everyone that a deal will get done. If behind-the-scenes union leadership is actually preparing for a work stoppage by booking overseas commitments, that's a massive disconnect between public messaging and private actions. Think about the players who aren't in Stewart's position. The role players. The rookies. The second and third-year players who don't have massive overseas contracts waiting for them. They're watching their union vice presidents secure a financial safety net while they're left wondering if they'll have paychecks in May. That creates resentment within the union itself. It reinforces the perception that star players operate by different rules than everyone else. And union solidarity requires everyone believing they're in it together. Stewart's situation also highlights the fundamental tension in WNBA economics. Players go overseas because the money is better. That's not a secret. Top WNBA players might make $200,000 in a season. Those same players can make $400,000 or $500,000 playing overseas for a few months. The financial incentive is obvious. But it also reveals how far the WNBA still has to go in terms of player compensation. If your union vice president is prioritizing overseas play over being present during CBA negotiations, it's because overseas play is more valuable to her financially. That's the uncomfortable truth at the center of this whole situation. Stewart is making a rational economic decision. She's maximizing her earnings during her prime years. She's maintaining relationships with international teams that pay her well. She's building her global brand. From a personal finance standpoint, it's smart. But from a union leadership standpoint, it's terrible optics. Because it suggests that even the players negotiating for better WNBA salaries don't believe WNBA salaries will ever compete with international options. So where does this leave us? Training camp starts April 19th. The EuroLeague final ends April 19th. Stewart will either be on time, slightly late, or the entire question becomes moot, because negotiations crater and the season doesn't start as scheduled. Any of those outcomes is possible right now. And that uncertainty is exactly what the WNBA doesn't need heading into what should be its biggest season ever. Coming off the Caitlin Clark rookie year. Coming off record ratings and attendance. Coming off unprecedented media attention. This should be a celebration. Instead, it's a question mark. The real test comes in the next few weeks. If a CBA deal gets announced soon, Stewart's overseas commitment becomes a footnote. A brief moment of concern that ultimately didn't matter. But if negotiations drag into late March and early April with no resolution, this decision will be scrutinized much more harshly. It will become evidence that union leadership didn't take the urgency seriously. It will be used to argue that players aren't as committed to the league's success as they claim to be. And here's what really matters for fans. This is a 5-alarm fire, or it's nothing, and we won't know which until we see what happens next. If you're a WNBA fan who just discovered the league, you're right to be concerned. The union vice president booking overseas play during contract negotiations is unusual. It suggests something's off, but it doesn't necessarily mean disaster. It could just mean poor timing and worse optics. The question is whether Stewart knows something the rest of us don't, and whether what she knows should worry us. So what do you think? Is this a calculated move by someone who knows a deal is already done? Is it a safety net in case negotiations collapse? Or is it just terrible timing that got blown out of proportion? Drop your take in the comments. And if you want to stay updated on whether this season actually starts on time, subscribe because this CBA situation is about to get very interesting very quickly.